Do you want to talk about skills for emotional regulation? They actually exist. I'm Nicholeen Peck. I teach parenting, good communication, and how to build strong family bonds all over the world through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about emotional regulation. So in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about emotional dysregulation, and then we're going to talk about what we can do to have good emotional regulation instead of falling into the dysregulation traps. So what does it look like when somebody has dysregulation? Well, they might be angry, they might have outbursts, they might have depression and withdraw. They might get physical with other people in really aggressive ways. They might attack themselves or other people. They could even attempt to do self-harm or get into addictions as coping strategies for these feelings of dysregulation. It's a serious thing to feel like your emotions are so out of whack that you can't even control yourself. That's a pretty extreme circumstance, but actually there are a lot of people that experience this on a regular basis. It is true that emotional dysregulation can accompany certain diagnoses that a person might have. For instance, a person with ADHD or bipolar or personality disorder may experience a more difficult time with depression and emotional dysregulation. This is a common thing, and they have to recognize that could be part of the puzzle for how they tick, which means that a person needs to be empowered to understand what's going on, what they can do about it. You don't have to be trapped in an emotional dysregulated state. A person can take deliberate, intentional steps towards self-regulation that end up leading to empowerment and even better relationships. Those steps toward good emotional regulation are self-government steps. This channel is all about self-government. If you haven't subscribed to it yet, you may want to, because all of the videos are all about learning self-government for your family. What is self-government? Self-government is being able to determine the cause and effect of any given situation and possessing a knowledge of your own behaviors so that you can control them. So what does that mean? That means that a person learns to examine themselves, make plans for themselves, control themselves, follow through with their plans, and course correct when they feel like they've had a problem as they're moving forward at becoming the person they feel like that they ought to become. That ought is huge in the self-government world, because there's what you want and then there's what you ought. What you want can be manipulated very easily, but what you ought, that's deep. It's that version of you that you know is the best version of you, the one that is supposed to surface. You probably even have a spiritual or moral attachment to that version of you. You might even beat yourself up from time to time because you haven't achieved that version of you yet, but you know it's there. It's the ought. The ought inside of what I ought to be, but I'm not there yet. A self-governed person does not lose sight of the ought. They keep moving in the direction toward that version of themselves that they ought to be, and they break away all of the obstacles that get in the way of that ought, of who they know they are supposed to become. So when you're looking at yourself in a state of emotional dysregulation, you know that's not who you ought to be. You shouldn't be a person who's out of control and feels like they need somebody else or something else to save them all the time. By the way, those things never work anyway, right? But what do you do instead? Let's talk about that. For self-government, planning is key. If you take the time to prepare yourself for what you know you ought to do and who you ought to become, it makes the steps way easier. Your chance of success goes way up. Have you ever met one of those people who's really into visualization, and they say, just visualize yourself in that race, right? I know when a lot of athletes do a ton of visualization. They visualize themselves in a particular meet or race or game again and again. They visualize the hardest moment and how they got through it. They visualize all the good moments and how they succeed in the good moments. They visualize all of these things over and over again. Why do they do that? Because in the moment, that's what they will do, is what they visualized. Well, the same goes for preparing for anything for who you ought to be. If it's in your relationships, if it's with your daily scheduling, if it's with overcoming addiction, anything that would relate to you controlling you, visualization is going to be key. So in my Teaching Self-Government program, it's called the TSG Parenting course, there is a concept that we talk about called the family vision. This vision concept is powerful. It gives everyone in the family the reason why they would care. But we shouldn't just stop at having a vision for the family. We should also have a vision for ourselves. So take the same principles and components that make a great family vision that's in my TSG Parenting course and create a great vision for yourself so that you can have personal vision or vision for each individual relationship as well as that collective family vision that you might be looking for. Without vision, the people perish. You've got to have vision, make sure you're focusing ahead. But don't just stop there. Once you have a picture of where you're going and why it matters to you, now you've got to have the, but how do I get there? What exactly do I do to achieve that vision that I'm going to look for all the time? Well, that's where our skills and practicing good productive skills comes in. Did you know that you can have skills for emotional regulation? It's true. Basically, if you just break down really healthy, emotionally healthy behavior, you will find the little steps that you need for emotional regulation. You will find things you can direct yourself to do. In my TSG Parenting course, I teach skill sets that parents can teach their children and, quite frankly, that the parents need to know for themselves. So there are 4 basic skills that are just adult skills that everyone needs. These 4 basic skills take care of 99% of childhood behavioral problems. How is that even possible? Well, it's because they're broken down into steps. So let's just take one of those skills. Well, first I'm going to tell you the 4 basic skills, which are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. Let's just take following instructions. That's the basic of all skills. If you can't follow instructions, you can't self-govern yourself. If someone won't follow your instructions, they can't self-govern themselves. A person needs to get to that baseline. There are 5 steps to following an instruction. You look at the person, keep a calm face, voice, and body, say okay or ask to disagree appropriately, do the task immediately, and then check back. So how in the world is this going to help us with our self-regulation? Well, when we are having an emotional problem, we are going to need to instruct ourselves in a new direction. We're going to need to say, okay, who ought I to be in this? Or what skill ought I to use? Oh, I need to get to calmness. So I might say, self, you need to take your 3 calming breaths. Self, you need to focus on calmness and drop the subject on things. So now I'm going to start telling myself things. I'm going to look at the situation or the person, myself maybe even, and then I'm going to keep a calm face, voice, and body. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to make myself do it, and then I'm going to check back with myself and say, I did it. I took my breaths. How am I now? Am I okay now? And if not, then I'm going to give myself another instruction moving forward. You might see how accepting no answers would be very beneficial to self-regulation. Life is full of no answers. That particular skill is going to help you a ton, especially because one of the steps in that skill is to drop the subject. So it teaches you, okay, I can choose to let something go, to drop the subject. Usually when a person is having a struggle with emotional regulation, it's because they're overthinking or over-focusing on one thing or one problem, and they can't get it out of their mind. And that's why they're starting to boil over and they're starting to not process correctly. In order to help them, they may have to learn how to drop the subject. And that's contained in the training for that skill, accepting a no answer. So just learning the skills that you need to communicate with other people and breaking those down actually helps you develop the skills that you need for self-regulation as well. If I'm working with somebody else who's struggling with self-regulation, then I'm going to teach them ahead of time. These are the skills you need. This is how I will correct you and give you feedback. This is how we'll do teaching moments. If you seem to be going completely out of control, you're getting dysregulated, then this is what I will do to help you. Now, what I'm going to do to help them is something called the rule of three. The rule of three is a skill that I teach in my TSG parenting course to help them. If the child is very little, then I'm probably not going to use the rule of three. I actually have another calming procedure that we go through where we use a calm down spot, which is different than a timeout. It's not the same, but we help the child learn how to regulate, how to examine their breathing and stuff when they're having these calm down interactions with the parent. So be sure to learn a lot about that. In fact, in a moment, I'll help you get a little bit more help with calmness. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually engage with the person in a way that is just descriptive, not emotionally reactive. If a person is starting to be emotionally dysregulated, the last thing they need is for another person to come in and be emotional at them. They will blow over. They can't handle any more stimulation. So the best thing to do is to bring in words that are non-stimulation words. These would be words that are just descriptive words, like, okay, right now you're pacing. You're walking back and forth. So you're describing what's happening, then you give a little instruction. Okay, how about you just sit down on that chair right there for a second, and let's just take some deep breaths. So you're going to start by describing and then instructing, describing, instructing. If the person continues to go out of control, then you have to follow through with the intensive teaching plan, either using the calm plan for toddlers or you'll have to do what's called the rule of three. The whole point of the calm plan, the calm down spot, or the rule of three is to engage the prefrontal cortex, get the person thinking about their own state of being at the time, okay? Their calmness, so that then you can talk about the situation. Whatever you do, if they are talking back to you, yelling at you about something, do not respond to that talking in a way where you're going to try to carry on a conversation or justify yourself or anything like that. Just describe what they're doing. This is what you're doing. This is what you need to be doing. And then we can talk about it. Those are the most important things that you can say, and then stay calm yourself. So I have a little special gift for you. It's an introductory course to the Teaching Self-Government Parenting program. It is not going to be everything, but it will help you with your calmness, which is a great first step in your self-government learning. It's called the Calm Parenting Toolkit. So on my website, you can find the Calm Parenting Toolkit, or if you want, you can go in the description that's below this video. It says teachselfgov.com/toolkit. If you go to the link there in the description, you will get the Calm Parenting Toolkit for free. And that will give you 10 lessons, 10 tools that you can use to become that calmer version of yourself, that version of yourself that you know you ought to be. This will help you with your regulation, and it will also start you on the path to helping other people with their emotional regulation as well. So click on that link. I'll see you there.